Have you ever felt like life keeps saying no to you? You try your best. You work hard. You never give up, but somehow you still fail again and again. This is the story of Ethan, a man who lost jobs, lost money, lost confidence, and almost lost hope. But what he learned from failure changed his life forever. Let's begin. My name is Ethan. Today I am 32 years old. When people see me now, they think I am successful. They see my small business. They see my car. They see my smile, but they do not see the long road behind me. They do not see the failures. They do not see the nights when I cried alone. They do not see the times I wanted to give up. Sometimes, when I sit quietly by my window at night, I think about my past. I remember a young man. That young man was me, and he failed again and again. I grew up in a small town. Life was simple there. My father worked hard every day. My mother took care of the family. We were not rich, but we had enough food, we had a small house, and we had hope. As a child, I had many dreams. I wanted to become someone important. I wanted to make my parents proud. I wanted to build a better life. Every night, before sleeping, I imagined my future. In my dreams, everything was possible. I thought success would come easily. I thought hard work always brought good results. I thought life was fair. But life had other plans. When I finished high school, I left my hometown. I moved to the city. I was excited. The city looked beautiful. The buildings were tall. The streets were busy. Everything felt new. Everything felt possible. I carried one small suitcase, and I carried many dreams. I found a small room to rent. The room was tiny. There was an old bed, a small table, one chair, and a window. That was all, but I was happy. Believed this was the beginning of my success story. I found my first job at a small store. The salary was low, but I did not care. I wanted experience. I wanted to learn every morning. I woke up early. I worked hard. I smiled at customers. I listened carefully. I tried my best. For a few months, everything was fine. Then one day, the store closed. The owner had money problems. All employees lost their jobs, including me. I remember walking home that evening. The sky was gray. The wind was cold. My hands were in my pockets, and my heart felt heavy. It was my first failure, but I told myself not to worry. You are young, I said. You will find another job. A few weeks later, I found one. This time, I worked in an office. I was nervous. I wanted everyone to like me, so I worked harder than before. I arrived early. I left late. I checked my work many times, but I made mistakes, small mistakes, then bigger mistakes. One day, my manager called me into his office. He looked serious. My heart started beating fast. Ethan, he said softly, you are a good person, but this job is not right for you. I understood immediately. A few minutes later, I walked out of the office carrying a small box with my things. My second failure. I sat on a bench outside. People walked past me. Cars moved through the streets. Life continued, but I felt frozen. I looked at the sky. I wanted answers. Why was this happening? Why was I failing? I had worked hard. I had tried my best. Was that not enough? That night I called my mother. I tried to sound strong, but mothers know everything. She heard the sadness in my voice. Are you okay? She asked. For a few seconds I could not speak. Then I said quietly, no. My mother listened. She did not judge me. She did not tell me I was weak. She simply listened. When I finished speaking, She said something I still remember today. "Ethan, failure is not the end." I was silent. Then she continued. "Sometimes life teaches us slowly." I looked out the window. The city lights shone in the darkness. "But it hurts," I said. "Yes," she answered. "I know." Her voice was gentle, warm, safe. "Keep going," she said. "One day, you will understand." After the call ended, I sat alone in my room. The room felt smaller than ever. The silence felt heavier than ever. I looked at my reflection in the window. I looked tired, lost, confused. For the first time, I doubted myself, maybe. I was not smart enough. Maybe I was not talented enough. Maybe success was for other people, not for me. Days passed, then weeks. I searched for work again. Many companies rejected me. Some never replied. Some said I lacked experience. Others said they found someone better. Rejection felt like another stone on my shoulders, heavier and heavier. One morning, I received another rejection email. I stared at the screen. Then I laughed, not because it was funny, because I was tired, very tired. I closed the laptop. I lay on my bed, and I stared at the ceiling. The room was quiet. My future felt quiet, too. For the first time in my life, I wondered if I should stop dreaming. Maybe dreams were dangerous. Maybe dreams only led to disappointment. Maybe it was easier to expect nothing. That way, nothing could hurt me. But deep inside my heart, a small voice remained. It was weak, very weak, but it was still there. The voice whispered, "Try one more time." I closed my eyes. I listened carefully, and for reasons I could not explain, I decided to stand up again. I did not know it then, but the hardest failures were still waiting for me, and the most important lesson of my life had not arrived yet. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The room was dark. For a few seconds, I stayed in bed. I listened to the silence. I did not want to get up. I did not want to search for another job. I did not want another rejection. But rent was waiting. Bills were waiting. Life was waiting. So I got up, I washed my face, I put on my old jacket, and I walked out the door. The city was waking up. People were rushing to work. Coffee. Shops were opening. Buses were full. Everyone seemed to know where they were going. Everyone except me. For months, I continued searching. Some days I found hope. Other days, I found disappointment. I worked temporary jobs. I carried boxes. I cleaned the floors. I delivered packages. The work was hard. The money was a little, but I needed to survive. Every night, I returned to my room exhausted. My body hurt. My mind hurt even more. One evening, while scrolling through my phone, I saw an advertisement. "Start your own business." I stared at the words. A business. The idea felt exciting. Maybe I did not need another company to hire me. Maybe I could create something myself. For the first time in many months, I felt a small spark inside me. Hope. The next day, I began making plans. I read articles online. I watched videos. I borrowed books from the library. I learned everything I could. I spent hours studying. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Slowly, a dream started to grow. It was a simple idea. Nothing big, nothing special, but it was mine. I used almost all my savings. Every dollar felt important. Every decision felt important. Knew the risk, but I believed in myself. At least, I tried to. The first day of my business arrived. I was nervous. I could barely eat breakfast. My hands shook, my heart raced, but I smiled. This was my chance. This was my new beginning. The first customer arrived, then another, then another. I felt excited. I felt alive. Maybe this would work. Maybe everything was finally changing. For a few weeks, things looked good, not amazing, but good. Then the problems started. Small problems at first, then the larger ones. Customers stopped coming, costs increased. Unexpected. Expenses appeared every week, brought new challenges. Worked longer hours, I slept less, I worried more. One night, I sat alone at my desk. Papers covered the table. Numbers covered the papers. The numbers did not look good, not good at all. Checked them again and again, but the answer stayed the same. I was losing money. A cold feeling moved through my body. I knew what was happening. My business was failing. I spent the next few months fighting to save it. I tried new ideas. I worked harder. I prayed. I hoped. But some battles cannot be won through effort alone. One rainy afternoon, I finally accepted the truth. The business was over. I could not continue. I had no money left. I had no solutions left. Only disappointment remained. I locked the door one last time. I stood outside in the rain. Cars passed by. People hurried home. No one knew what had happened. No one knew that a dream had just ended. I looked at the sign above the door, then I walked away. My third failure, and this one hurt the most because this time I could not blame anyone else. The idea was mine. The decisions were mine. The mistakes were mine. For weeks, I felt empty. I stopped answering messages. I stopped calling friends. I stopped believing in myself. Every morning felt heavy. Every evening felt longer. One day, my friend Daniel called. I almost ignored the call. But something made me answer. "Hey," he said. "How are you?" I laughed quietly, not because I was happy, because I did not know how to answer. Daniel understood immediately. He knew me well. "Want to meet?" he asked. A few hours later, we sat in a small cafe. The smell of coffee filled the air. Rain tapped softly against the windows. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then I finally said it. "I failed again." Daniel nodded. "I know. I don't understand," I said. "I work hard. I try. I keep trying." I looked down at my hands. "So why do I keep failing?" Daniel was quiet. Then he asked a question. "Do you know how many times a baby falls before learning to walk?" I looked at him. "No." "A lot," he said. "Hundreds of times." I smiled a little. "But babies don't quit." I said nothing. "They fall." He paused. "They get up." Another pause. "They fall again." I stared out the window. Rain continued falling from the gray sky. "And one day," Daniel said softly, "they walk." His words stayed with me, not because they solved my problems. They didn't. I was still broke. I was still lost. Was still afraid. But his words gave me something important, a different way to see failure. That night, back in my room, I opened an old notebook. Inside, I found goals I had written years earlier. Some goals had failed, some dreams had disappeared, others seemed impossible. As I turned the pages, I noticed something strange. Many good things in my life had come after difficult moments, after disappointments, after failures. The pattern was there, again and again. Maybe failure was not only an ending, maybe it was also a teacher, a painful teacher, but a teacher nonetheless. For the first time in many months, I did not feel angry at my failures. I simply looked at them, I studied them, I listened to them, and slowly, I began to understand something. Failure was changing me. It was teaching me patience, teaching me humility, teaching me strength. Lessons I never wanted. Lessons I never asked for, but the lessons I needed. Still, understanding something is easier than living it. And life was not finished teaching me, because another challenge was already waiting. Challenge much bigger than losing a job, much bigger than losing money. A challenge that would test my heart in ways I could never imagine. And when it arrived, everything changed. A few months passed. Life became quieter. Not easier, just quieter. Was still working temporary jobs. Was still trying to rebuild my life, but something inside me had changed. I no longer expected success to arrive quickly. I no longer believed life would always go according to plan. Failure had taken many things from me, but it had also removed my illusions. One evening, as I was finishing work, my phone rang. It was my mother. I smiled when I saw her name my mother often called me. Sometimes we talked for an hour, sometimes only for a few minutes. But hearing her voice always made me feel better. I answered immediately. Hi, Mom. But it was not my mother's voice. It was my father. His voice sounded different, weak, unsteady. My heart immediately felt nervous. Dad. There was a pause. Then he spoke. Your mother is in the hospital. The world seemed to stop. For a moment, I could not breathe. What happened? Another silence. Then he explained, the doctors had found a serious illness. They needed more tests, more treatment, more answers. I sat down on a nearby bench. My legs suddenly felt weak. The city continued moving around me. People walked past. Cars filled the streets, but all I could hear was my father's voice. That night, I packed a small bag. The next morning, I returned to my hometown. The trip felt longer than ever. Outside the window, trees passed by, fields passed by, small houses passed by, but my mind stayed in one place. The hospital. When I arrived, I walked quickly through the doors. The smell of medicine filled the air. Everything felt cold. Everything felt quiet. I found my mother's room. When I opened the door, she smiled. The same gentle smile she had always given me. The smile that had comforted me since childhood, but she looked tired, much more tired than before. Sat beside her bed. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she reached for my hand. I knew you would come. I tried to smile, but my eyes were already full of tears. For the next several weeks, I stayed in my hometown. I helped my parents whenever I could. Hospital visits became part of daily life. Some days were hopeful, some days were frightening. Every test result felt important. Every phone call felt important. I wanted to fix everything. I wanted to solve the problem, but this was different. This was not a failed job, not a failed business. This was something I could not control. And that reality terrified me. One evening, after a long hospital visit, I sat outside alone. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and gold. Birds flew across the horizon. The world looked beautiful. Yet my heart felt heavy. For years, I had been afraid of failure, afraid of losing jobs, afraid of losing money, afraid of losing dreams. But now I understand something. There were losses much deeper than those things. Losses that touched the heart, losses that changed people forever. As I sat there, my mother slowly walked outside. She sat beside me. For a while, We watched the sunset together. Then she spoke. Ethan. Yes, Mom? Are you still carrying all your failures? I looked at her. She smiled softly. The question surprised me. After a moment, I nodded. A little. She squeezed my hand. Then she said something I will never forget. You think your failures made you weak? I listened, carefully. But they made you kind. I blinked, confused. She continued. You understand pain. Now, you understand disappointment. You understand struggle. I looked down at the ground. My mother spoke, slowly. Because of your failures, you listen to people better. You judge people less. You care more. Her voice was calm, gentle, wise. Success teaches some lessons. She paused. But failure teaches others. The evening wind moved softly through the trees. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I thought about her words. Maybe she was right. Maybe failure had changed me. Not in the way I wanted, but in a way I needed. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, my mother's condition improved. The doctors became more hopeful. Treatment was helping. The fear did not disappear completely, but hope returned. Little by little, day by day. Eventually, I returned to the city. Life was still difficult. Money was still tight. My future was still uncertain. But my perspective had changed. I stopped measuring my worth by success alone. I stopped comparing myself to others. I stopped asking why my journey looked different. Instead, I focused on small steps, one day at a time, one lesson at a time, one opportunity at a time. I found a new job. Nothing special, nothing impressive, but it was honest work. And this time, I approached it differently. I listened more, learned more, expected less, appreciated more. Months passed, then a year. For the first time in a long while, life felt stable, not perfect, just stable. And strangely, that was enough. One afternoon, while organizing old papers, I found the notebook again, the same notebook, filled with goals and dreams. I slowly turned the pages. I saw the failed business, the rejected applications, the abandoned plans, the broken dreams years earlier. Those pages had made me feel ashamed. Now they made me smile, because every failure told part of my story. Without those failures, I would not be the same person. Without those failures, I might never have learned patience or gratitude or resilience. I closed the notebook and placed it on the shelf. For the first time, I felt peace, not because everything was perfect, not because I had achieved every dream, but because I finally accepted my journey, the good parts and the painful parts. I thought the story was ending. Thought I had finally learned all the lessons failure wanted to teach me. But life had one final lesson waiting. Lesson that would change the meaning of success forever. And it would arrive when I least expected it. Life moved forward, slowly, quietly. One day became another. Weeks became months. Months became years. Continued working. I continued learning. I continued growing. Not because I was chasing success anymore, but because I wanted to become a better person. One small step at a time. The strange thing about life is this. Sometimes, the things we desperately want never arrive when we expect them, and sometimes, when we stop chasing them, they quietly find us. One afternoon, I received a message from an old friend. His company needed help with a project. Nothing permanent, just a short opportunity. Years earlier, I would have said yes immediately. I would have seen it as my big chance, my path to success. But now, I simply saw it as work, an opportunity to learn, an opportunity to contribute. So I accepted, I worked hard, I listened. Carefully, I did my best, not because I wanted recognition, not because I wanted praise, but because I cared. The project went well. Then another opportunity appeared, and then another. People began recommending me to others. More doors opened, more possibilities appeared. Slowly, almost without noticing, my life started changing. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily, year after year. The funny thing was this: success finally arrived when it was no longer the center of my life. One morning, I sat in my office. Sunlight entered through the window. A cup of coffee rested beside me. On the desk were papers, plans, and projects. Years earlier, this scene had been one of my dreams. Yet as I looked around, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude, not pride, not excitement, gratitude. Because I knew how easily everything could have been different. I knew how many times I had almost quit. How many times have I almost surrendered? How many times have I believed I was not enough? A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. A young employee entered. He looked nervous. Very nervous. I recognized that look immediately. I had worn that expression many times. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Of course." He sat down. For a moment, he stared at the floor. Then he spoke. "I think I'm failing." His voice sounded heavy, defeated, familiar. Listened quietly. He told me about mistakes, about disappointments, about fear, about feeling left behind. When he finished, silence filled the room. Then I smiled, not because his problems were small, but because I understood them. Years ago, someone had listened to me. Now it was my turn to listen to someone else. I leaned back in my chair. Then I asked him a question. "How many times have you failed?" He looked surprised. "I don't know." "A lot?" He nodded. I smiled again. "Good." Now he looked even more confused. "Good?" he asked. "Why is that good?" I looked out the window for a moment, then I answered, "Because you're still here." He remained silent. I continued, "You failed, yet you're still trying. You made mistakes, yet you're still learning. You fell, yet you stood up again." The young man listened carefully, and suddenly, I heard my mother's voice in my memory. I heard Daniel's voice. I heard every lesson life had taught me. Failure after failure, year after year, I realized something beautiful. The people who had helped me had all experienced pain themselves. That was why they understood. That was why their words mattered. The young employee eventually left my office, but before leaving, he smiled, a small smile, a hopeful smile, and as the door closed behind him, I felt something warm inside my heart. Maybe this was success too, helping someone continue, helping someone believe, helping someone stand up one more time. That evening, after work, I went for a walk. The sun was beginning to set. Golden light covered the streets. People laughed, children played, birds crossed the sky. Everything seemed peaceful. As I walked, I thought about my journey, the lost jobs, the failed business, the rejection letters, the sleepless nights, the fears, the doubts, the tears. For years, I had seen those moments as evidence of failure. Now I saw them differently. They were steps, painful steps, difficult steps, but necessary steps. Without those failures, I would never have become who I am. Without those failures, I would never have learned resilience. Without those failures, I would never have understood compassion. Without those failures, I would never have appreciated success. I stopped walking and looked up at the evening sky. The colors were beautiful: orange, pink, gold. For a moment, I simply stood there, breathing, remembering, grateful. Then I quietly spoke the words I wished someone had told me years earlier. Maybe they are words you need to hear. 2. Failure does not mean your story is over. Failure does not mean you are weak. Failure does not mean you are worthless. Failure means you tried. Failure means you were brave enough to begin. Failure means you are still learning. And sometimes, failure is not the opposite of success. Sometimes, failure is part of success. The road may be longer than you expected. The lessons may be harder than you imagined. The journey may test you in ways you never wanted, but keep going, keep learning, keep standing up again and again and again. One day, you may look back and realize something surprising. The moments that broke your heart were also the moments that built your strength. The moments that made you cry were also the moments that taught you wisdom. The failures you wanted to erase were the very things that helped shape your future. I know this because I lived it. I failed many times. More times than I can count. I failed again and again and again, but I never stopped moving forward. And because I kept going, failure never had the final word. The final word was growth. The final word was hope. The final word was courage. And if you are struggling today, if you feel lost, if you feel tired, if you feel like giving up, please remember this. Your story is not finished yet. Turn the page. Take a breath. Stand up once more. And keep walking forward. Your next chapter may be closer than you think.